Keck. William, welcome.
Yes. Well. Congrats.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. Hi, everybody. We're all doing well? Yes? Oh, it's great to see some new faces and some familiar faces.
Just first of all, thank you. I had a chance to thank Jenny. I didn't see you. Thank you for coming. There's a million things to do in LA, and you're here tonight. I so appreciate every one of you. Wow. Okay,
Right.
Let's do it.
Wow.
Let's tell some stories. Boss.
Really? You want me to tell some stories? First of all, okay. We're gonna start really simple, okay? I just some yes or no's.
No.
Yes or no's from you.
Easy.
Dumpster dive?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Wedding crasher.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Jailhouse interviews.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Ever disguise yourself as maybe, I don't know, somebody like the Great Gatsby or anybody like that?
No.
No.
That's a no.
That's a solid no. You sure? Because I could probably find that in there.
Yeah, that's a solid no. Yeah, well,
Okay.
are we talking in like which version? Leonardo DiCaprio or? Yeah, that is a no.
Okay. Did you ever lie to a priest?
A minister at a wedding.
Okay.
Yes.
We're gonna.
Not a Catholic priest, so it's okay.
Okay.
Or was.
Wow, you're couching these things big time. So did you never pretended to be anybody else other than yourself?
I didn't say that.
Oh.
You said.
Did you disguise
you
yourself?
Said, yeah,
Yeah.
Gatsby.
Okay.
So no, I
Okay.
pretended to be lots of people.
Okay.
Yeah. I pretended to be you once.
Yes. You failed. You failed.
I know. Who could be possibly Mark Steines? One and only.
So did you ever? I know the answer to this. Did you ever go to extreme lengths to get the scoop that would be deemed unacceptable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to interpret that. I mean, I think most people would find the stories I investigated unacceptable morally.
Right.
Right? You know? I mean, it's a fine line. You got to judge for yourself.
Okay, all right. I don't want you to get too serious because I know.
No, yeah.
I know what's at the end of this book. Hey, you wrote this book to get into heaven, didn't you? Like, that's why you
That's-
wrote this book. Bill. I
that's-
mean, if you believe that sort of thing.
That's
which we do.
long gone. Because as Kelsey writes, I'm going to burn in hell.
Yeah, right.
Kelsey Grammer said, one day you're going to burn in hell.
Well, what did Terry Hatcher say about you and
Terry Hatcher said, one day you will look up at your reflection in your coffin and not like what you see. And I told this to the ABC publicist who said, what kind of narcissist has a mirror in their coffin? Me, I would.
There are some things, honestly, this is such a great, fun read, especially for somebody I was in the entertainment side of things for 17 years. And there are things I wouldn't do, and yet you did them. And
You didn't have to. You got paid the big bucks. You know, I had to do this stuff.
I need to know, first of all, how do you expense and write off a prostitute?
Oh my gosh. We are in the children's section here.
Well, I didn't plan that.
So I'm gonna
True or
very-
false? I mean, you don't have to
Yes.
get into details.
No,
but
I
is it a pull-down window and your software? Is that what it is?
No.
Okay.
You're referencing a Kelsey Grammer story. Kelsey was engaged to a woman that we believed was a lady of the evening, a nice way to say it. So they sent me to Vegas to investigate if that was true. So that meant ordering one of the ladies of the evening on the flyer that we were shown. And then actually while I was there, I was in Vegas with my friends Tim and Brad. We had tickets to go see Siegfried and Roy. And I was pissed that I was having to do this prostitute investigation and I was missing the Tiger Show. So
This
let's
was
just
before
say
the injury, right?
Huh?
This was before the injury.
It was
yeah.
the night of. I really missed it. So I wrapped up as quickly as I could in the Mirage and got to see the second half of the Tiger Show.
This is what I find when Will came over to the house and we were chatting a little bit about this. I found it fascinating that you went out and tracked down these celebrities basically to see if you could, I don't know, offer an olive branch to them in a way?
For the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You felt you had to do that?
In some cases, I thought it would be smart. I just mentioned Kelsey Grammer's fiance. Kelsey saw the chapter. Stan Rosenfeld, his publicist, signed off. Kelsey chose not to respond. But his former fiance, the one I was investigating, did choose to respond. So she writes a page in the book, and here's a little, little juice. You read it. Tammy, she reveals that Kelsey ended their engagement by through the therapist. The therapist called and said, "You're not going to be marrying Kelsey." And after that, she contemplated ending it all. But happy ever after. She's doing great. She may have more money than Kelsey now. She married like a billionaire. So it was great to get to hear from some of these people who their lives have changed, my life changed. So yeah, I mean, I gave them a chance to respond, and many did.
So when you get this book, and you do step on a star along the way, you will be able to read some of the things these people have said to Will after he reached out and said, "Hey, I want to write about you." Whether it's Henry Winkler or Linda Evans, but I'm going to read you just a couple of things that are cringeworthy, at least from my perspective. Like if somebody wrote this, okay? This is just the very beginning. Okay, from Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman, which we all know. She says, "I'm a firm believer that we all have the ability to evolve and not allow mistakes made in our past to define who we are in the present." Yep. I applaud the mission to offer transparency, make amends, and heal old wounds in his book, When You Step Upon the Star. That was kind. I felt she was nice.
Yeah, especially considering I crashed her father's funeral 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is true. Yeah, can I tell that real quickly?
Go for it.
So I'm a huge Bionic Woman fan, and I said, if there's ever a chance to interview Lindsay Wagner or Lee Majors, please let me do it. So, hey Rondalyn, hi, I didn't see you back there. They said, hey, it's your day today. We have a story for you about Lindsay Wagner. I'm like, oh, this is great, amazing. So they said, we want you to go to her father's funeral and try to find out who the boy toy is that she's dating. So I already had my Bionic license plate at that time. So I had to hide the Jeep behind the church so it wouldn't seem like some psycho was crashing the funeral. And I met the boyfriend and we chatted, and then Lindsay came and she greeted me. She said, "Thank you for coming. How did you know my father?" And I said, "Well, actually, I didn't know your dad. I'm with the National Enquirer. We have a photographer across the street in the bushes, and he got a photo of you and your boyfriend." She said, "Well, then what do you need? What do you want?" I said, "Well, maybe a caption." And she said, "Okay, I'll give you a caption." Fuck you. Yeah. So 30 years later, the fact that she's saying that people can change, it meant a lot,
Well, it meant a lot that you went and knocked on her door and said, "Hey, can we, talk about that moment?"
Sure.
So on to, this is from Donna Mills from Knots Landing. She said, "The fact that he saw the error of his ways and now has the guts to tell it like it was shows me he is really a decent human being who knows how to bring good into the world, and I applaud him." Let's see, there's another one, Dee Wallace by the way, you put E.T. also Cujo.
Oh.
I mean, she was
not that E.T. It's a different E.T., not your E.T.
Oh, got it.
Yeah,
I was like,
two
wait,
ETs.
there's only really one, right? By the way, this tells you how dated I am. I'm still using my old Entertainment Tonight.
Wow.
When it's down with that. All of us have done things in our lives that we're not proud of. Will Keck cops to the lesser him from the more enlightened him as he's matured into. He does this with brutal honesty and a lot of humor and bravo. Why did you want to do this?
Because these are the stories that everyone always wanted me to tell. When they found that I worked for the Enquirer, they didn't want to know who the nicest ones were. They wanted to know what the problems were. And during the pandemic, I was deciding what to keep and what to throw away. I kept everything. I kept every notebook, every photo, every recorded interview.
With intention to do this?
With one day. And then things slowed down. I finally had a chance to finish this thing that I've been working on really forever. I think that this is sort of my little bow tie on that chapter to my life. I'm ready to kind of move on to something else now. I may not have a choice, actually, if I want to go back to this line of work after this. This may be it.
One thing that is really interesting, I at least found, was that at the end of each, call it chapter, or I don't know, cringeworthy confession you had, there's a lesson.
Yes.
Why did you want to include a lesson in these?
Well, I guess, my publisher actually, when I first met with them, hi Stephen, one of the people from Jacobs Brown, they saw the individual stories as fun. But they said what would really make this a book is to have you be the central character, for it to be your arc. And part of that was my evolution from kind of a closeted bad boy who was snooping into other people's business to an out, honest person. And so I did see like a little lesson that I learned from each of these things. And I also didn't want people to think that I was boasting about these things. You know, I'm proud of how I had the guts to do these things, but I'm not proud of the stories that I exposed back in the day. But I did learn from them. Right. And as a lot of these celebrities have said, you don't want to be judged for who you were 10, 20, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. You can change. And I don't know, Tim, have I changed or am I still that same? Have I changed? Okay, all right, great.
Well, it's good. I never knew this side of you because we met and worked together on Home and Family.
Yeah.
And other than him showing up, maybe wearing suspenders when we did, you know, Little House on the Prairie or something, you were always game to be like, I'm dressing up in some sort of role. Let's, you know, to do that. Were you always like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. When I was covering premieres, I would dress up as the characters on the red carpet, and I remember I was a hobbit for Lord of the Rings, and it was Jack Black who just kind of looked at me and he said, "Are you a fan?" Or I'm like, "No, I'm with USA Today." And he just kind of shook his head and just kind of walked away. So yeah, it's been in my blood for a while.
Your fashionable flair actually caught up with you when you ran into Ellen and who was it this time?
Portia de Rossi, her wife.
Yeah. That backfired for you, didn't it? You want to
Yeah,
explain that?
You're so good, by the way. You're so good, and I can see why you have done what you've done, Mark.
This is
Really,
ass kissing and
so
ass-
weird. Yeah.
This is why he did really well. And he's
But
ready
really,
to
I
go.
mean, I'm just picturing you talking to Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts and little old me. It's completely bizarre. Yeah, so I was at the People's Choice Awards, and I was interviewing Portia and Ellen, and it was going very well. They were talking about their Christmas presents they'd exchanged. They were sports cars, of course, as we give to each other on the holidays. And Ellen just starts to kind of rub my tuxedo that I was wearing. And I'm like, well, neither one of us is getting anything out of this. But she's like, this is lovely. This isn't real fur, is it? And in a moment of weakness at the John Barbados store on Melrose, one of the for sale items was a tuxedo with real fur. And this was a moment to lie, but I didn't do that anymore. So I said, yeah, it's real fur. And she recoiled. I mean, she said, oh, I liked you, but I don't like you anymore. and Portia, well, of course, recoiled as well. So I just sort of, kind of, sorry, I'll bury it in my backyard somewhere. I apologize, I made a mistake. But she called me back and she said, "Come on, come back," and she gave me an actual interview. But yeah, no, I learned you don't do that. But that same tuxedo, I wore it to a PETA event. and I'll just tell you why I did that. Tracy, you're horrified. I was covering just some regular premiere. Entertainment Weekly said, "Hey, can you cover another event?" I said, "Yeah, sure." And then I found out that I was going to a PETA event. And so as I'm interviewing Ingrid, who was the head of PETA, she's just sort of looking at me and she's like, "Is that real?" I said, "No, absolutely not." No, it's not. But fur is wrong. That was terrible. Let's throw away our furs.
So when we worked on Home and Family
Yeah.
together, and the Universal lot
Yes.
was fantastic because like many lots in town, there's so many great memories there. I used to tour when I went on a tour when I was a kid and saw the place.
Yeah.
Wisteria Lane was there.
Yes.
And
yes.
you spent some time, and I didn't know this because I thought I had like the scoop. I thought, because I'm pretty close with Terry Hatcher. But
Please don't give her a copy of it.
But come to know, you were in tight with. How would you, at the start of that show, how would you characterize your relationship with the four of them? Let's call it the four.
Well, it was great. I remember my first day on set. This was like maybe 5 episodes in.
And you were with what?
USA Today. USA Today. Does anyone have any water? Actually, my mouth is. Ah, yes, of course. Of course he does. The ever faithful. Thank you. Okay, great. It's working out. I was watching the scene between Eva Longoria and Terry Hatcher, and it was thank you, BJ, thank you. It was a cat fight, and they were saying, "Oh, we hate having to fight with each other. We're like sisters, and we're already family here." Well, thank you. Cut to 7 years later, and I'm on the set. I'm the only reporter that was allowed on the set for the final taping. And I'm watching one of the last scenes with Marcia Cross, Terry Hatcher, Felicity Huffman, and Eva. And the director yells, "Cut!" And instead of this being this foursome, this tight foursome, the three of them go one way and Terry goes to her lawn. And every time they yell cut, the same thing happened. They had not been speaking in, I think, 1.5 years or 2 years. And I kept all this secret for a long, long, long time. And people were just really kind of aware of what was going on. And for the final story I wrote, the final cover story, I tell the truth. And that's when Terry told me that I would see my reflection in my casket.
So
and
how would
like
you
what I
then
saw.
how would you then characterize your relationship once the show is over?
Well, it's Terry and I have not spoken since then. She was given the chapter. Marcia contributed a page for the book.
I want to get to that, yeah.
Yeah. She contributed a page. Felicity came on Home and Family a couple times, and she cooked, which was great. And then Eva I saw recently. She was my neighbor, actually.
Yeah.
So good, except for the one that they weren't talking to. So put two and two together, and I guess I'm in good company.
Okay.
Right?
You take a drink of water, because I have to turn my attention to, obviously you have the stars, but then you have the show creator. You remember Mark Cherry, right? He was a big heavy hitter when the show was going on. You got really close with him.
Yeah.
So close, sometimes too close, because then the fire can burn.
Yeah.
And he actually, let me see if I get this right. He actually wrote you into the show somehow?
Oh my gosh, Mark. Yeah.
I want to hear this story, or I want you to hear this story.
So, so I'd written very positive articles on Desperate Housewives. I really loved the show. And in the second season, they took a lot of flack for doing a controversial storyline with a new African-American family that had moved in, and I didn't touch that. But there was so much talk about it, I did sort of acknowledge the criticism that was going on, and Mark felt very, very slighted by that. And he ended up writing into an episode, and I'll tell you what happened. There was a new predator in the neighborhood, a sexual molester, and the character's name was Dr. Keck. And so the characters were saying, God, we trusted Dr. Keck, and we really didn't think he was capable of this kind of thing. So yeah, I asked Mark about that, and he said, "Oh, I was just having fun with that." Yeah, that was great.
Wait, did you?
I'm on TV as a child molester.
Did you learn about this in real time as you're watching the show?
I never missed an episode. Yeah, I was watching it. And I'm like, oh my God, you were a tombstone in an episode, Tim. You got to be, your name was on a tombstone in The Client, I remember. I'd rather be a tombstone than a child molester. Yeah.
Did anybody catch on to it and call you, or?
No, I don't think so. Or, yeah, I'm not sure, but that was
Well, were you
horrible.
going by Keck then, or Peck? What?
Milton Berle, I guess you're talking about, right?
No.
There's two Pecks.
Yeah.
Milton Berle always called me William Keck, and I said, no, it's Keck. He said, I'll call you Peck if I want to call you Peck. He was a miserable.
I think this
God
one
bless him.
this goes back to
But no, this was
Kelsey.
Kelsey.
Yeah.
This was Kelsey. Yeah. So I finally did. Kelsey, I told you, wrote about me in his book, and I was on a red carpet years later, and I'm like, maybe this is the time to introduce myself. I interviewed a few times, and he said, "Hello, it's Kelsey," and I said, "Hi, I'm William Keck." I just couldn't get the K out. But then, just 2 years ago, I was working on a Discovery Channel show. It was during Shark Week, and Kelsey was our guest, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? So luckily he wasn't available for a pre-interview. So I said to his publicist, at Shark Week, every guest this week has to talk about sharks. Does he have any shark encounters? And she said, I don't know, your host can just ask him during the interview. So Josh Gates was the host, he was doing the interview, and he said, so Kelsey, it's Shark Week, any fun shark stories to tell? He said, yeah, actually not a really fun one. My brother was eaten by a shark. And that's really happened. Two of his, that went over well. Two of his half brothers were swimming, they were scuba diving, and one actually was eaten by a shark. And I was mortified, and our host Josh Gates came out and said to the whole office, Keck, this has got to be the biggest fuck up of your career. We moved Kelsey out of Shark Week. We edited that chapter. And actually, he never should have been booked for Shark Week to begin with. But yeah, I mean, that was
Well,
me.
truth be told, I know he does his research, and he will always. You, at least when you worked with us, you always came up and gave me golden nuggets of knowledge.
Yeah,
to
this
work
was an
with.
oops. This was an oops.
Yeah.
On my part. Yeah.
Well, it was an oops. Not quite like Batman. And our oops
this was
with
on our show.
yeah,
yeah.
with Adam West. So if I can just
Yeah.
Adam West was coming on our show. You didn't dress up as Batman, did you? Did you have a Batman
Robin,
t-shirt?
I
You
think.
Robin, that's right. And we had this amazing opportunity to sit down. I grew up watching him. We used to climb up the side of our building, but really not. I remember you're like, he's got this tug at your heart story that it'll be perfect for our Hallmark audience.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be genuine, sincere. When I talked to him on the phone, he got very emotional about it. It'll be one of those, like, we can just leave the audience, just like, oh, what a sweet man. Did that happen?
No.
No, it didn't, did it?
It didn't. So the story he was supposed to tell was that he had a very close friendship with Frank Gorshin, who played the Riddler, and that he was with Frank on his deathbed. And to get a final smile out of Frank, he put a photo of him up as the Riddler up on his monitor, and he got to see that and smiled. And soon after that, he passed. So Mark is interviewing Adam. And so it's time to get to my question that I had given the guys. And so Mark said, yeah, so I guess you had a very close relationship with Frank. Can you tell us about that? And he got a little gleam in his eye, and he said, how long do I have? And Mark said, no, go ahead. We want to hear it. So he said, Frank and I were super close. We got off work early one day, and we ended up going up to a house in the Hollywood Hills. We opened the door. Keep in mind, this is Home and Family. We opened the door, and the craziest, wildest Hollywood orgy you've ever seen was going on. So this is Home and Family. It's cupcakes and puppies, and not orgies. So I mean, the crew was dying. The crew, you and Christina were actually trying to hold it together.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking of you, Hank, back in the editing bay.
Oh my
I
gosh.
haven't cut around that. Yeah.
Yeah, Hinckley, anything you want to say to that? You?
Save it for the next one.
Okay.
Stick around.
Yeah, Hinckley was our amazing editor on Home and Family, and I think he had to take away a few things that I was responsible for.
But he also gets credit. I would give you credit for the Shatner.
Oh.
Do you want to elaborate on the?
Yeah, we were fond of giving gifts in Home and Family, little surprises at the end. And
Do you want to set up how you first upset Shatner?
Oh, well. So it's all connected.
Yeah.
Shatner, he wrote a book about horses, his love of horses. And in the book, he didn't name how many horses he had. And so I assumed either he had a ton of horses and wanted to be humble, or for tax purposes, he wanted to hide it, or he had very few and didn't want to seem like, he wasn't the horse breeder that we were led to believe. So I asked him, I said, Bill, how many horses did you have? And he said, William. He said, you don't ask that question. Would you ask somebody how much money they make, or how many cars they have? And so he clearly, he didn't like that. So I really wanted to butter him up. So in his book about horses, he wrote about how he had this recurring dream about how he was a centaur. And so he was kind of running through the forest as a centaur with his big hairy chest. Frank, you're shaking your head. You know Shatner, I'm sure. So Hinckley created this amazing digital painting of Bill Shatner as a centaur. And I've reached out to Hank, and it's in the book. So we got it in the book. He loved it, and last I heard it was hanging in his garage.
And this is before AI. So right?
Oh.
It was like a 22-hour Photoshop job.
Yeah.
The first round, I'm like, I don't got chest looks right on that center. I was like, what other celebrity's head can I chop off? But then you got to find the right horse that fits the celebrity waist. And you'd be surprised prize.
Oh.
Not every horse race.
Fitz, did you go to Central Casting for that, or did you just?
Thank God for Google.
Right.
I think you said it was Hugh Jackman's chest, and then it was maybe, gosh, was it Tom Cruise's hands and Ellen Pompeo's yard? I remember is what you said, the composite that you pulled for that. But he loved it, so thank you.
But here's the point. I think if there's a lesson to be learned from that, is you never ask an actor or actress how much money they make or how much
Oh my
money
God,
their co-stars
okay.
make. Wait, what?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
Wait, you did that?
Yes.
You did, to their faces.
Yes.
Not
now,
in the
now
same
I'm kind
room.
of glad some of my friends couldn't make it tonight because that's all I may have left after this. So I was up for a job at USA Today, a staff position, and I really wanted to show that I had balls and I wasn't afraid to ask any questions. So I was doing an interview with the new 20 years ago Charlie's Angels, so Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu, and it was in a suite at the Lowe's Hotel in Santa Monica. And so I was sitting in my chair, and there was a long couch where I assumed they would sit, and then there was a love seat, and the three of them came in, and they all sat together in the love seat, which I didn't even think was possible. And I asked them, I said, you guys seem so close. This wasn't right away. I said, you guys seem so close. And like, oh yeah, we are. Oh my gosh, we finish each other's sentences, and we're girlfriends, and like triplets. And I said, how do you deal with the knowledge, Cameron, that you made $22 million for this picture, and Drew, you made $11 million, and Lucy, you made $2 million. So,
Hang on, let's just sit with that for a second, okay? Like, you can't wash that off, can you? I mean,
so I just have to say, Heidi Schaefer, one of the top publicists in Hollywood, just cringed. Oh, Will. And I'm lucky that they didn't all just fly in slow motion and kick me in the head. So I think Lucy was the first to answer. She's like, oh my God. In the history of Charlie's Angels 1 and 2, nobody has ever gone there. And then soon after that, I followed up with a question about why Drew's ex-husband, Tom Green, wasn't back in this movie. So I got the job at USA Today, but as you can imagine, I never interviewed Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy. Well, Lucy Liu, I think I may have. Yeah.
here's one of the things that I either really admire and respect about you, or just want to make sure your wiring isn't incorrect. So there is a point when you're talking with a celebrity,
Yeah.
you're reading the room constantly, because like you, I had to come up against some things.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
once asked to ask Lisa Marie Presley if Michael Jackson was gay.
Wow.
Which there was no way in hell I would even get to that, because I'm like, how do you even bring that up in the subject matter? But you're still sent in.
You're exactly
Many times you're sent
expecting you to ask
sent
that
in for
question.
stuff like that.
Right.
So you're reading the room and you go, I feel them pulling away from me. I feel them shutting down. I feel like this interview could end at any moment. I better just stop there. You, on the other hand, now hang on, because I'm leading to the Marcia Cross situation. Because you had your foot out the door.
Yeah.
You were all good. You had what you needed, but you gotta go in a little bit more, right? Explain
Yeah.
that. Explain, because this was a big moment for you personally.
I just feel I should say at this point that these are the ones I chose to tell in the book. 95% were lovely encounters.
That's not true.
But I don't think that would sell. I don't think that my lovely encounters with Hollywood stars, I don't think that would quite do it. I interviewed Terry Hatcher at her home. Eva Longoria made me waveless rancheros in her home. And Felicity, I'd interviewed at a gay bar with a couple trans women for her book, movie Transamerica. And so Marcia was the one holdout, and her publicist, Heidi Slan, had some reservations over some Britney Spears things that I'd done. So she was the holdout. But finally, things are going well, and she said, let's do this interview over at Marcia's house. So I was driving up to Marcia's lovely house in Santa Monica, and as I'm pulling in, I get a text message, and it's from this guy that I was dating at the time, and he said, hey, did you just see these nude photos that leaked of Marcia Cross? And I'm like, what? Yeah, they're on TMZ, and I pulled it up, and there they were. So here I am pulling up to Marcia Cross's house for a cozy at-home to meet her 2 new twin girls. And so I have a little angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. And this is the USA Today angel, and I still have my Inquirer devil. And I'm like, gosh, I don't need to ask this, but it's timely. And the editors may say, hey, why didn't you ask this? You were right there. The story broke. So we did the lovely interview. She had made me muffins, like Brie Vandekamp.
The kids got up from a nap. They brought
the little twin daughters came out. She let me hold one of the daughters.
So you got the baby smell. You got the fresh
baby. Yeah, a
smell.
little powdery Johnson & Johnson.
It was so pleasant.
Yeah, and then I asked about these nude photos at the very end of the interview.
How did you turn that corner?
Well, I mean, it's
Come on.
it's hard to go from I guess there are ways apparently, but I just said it. I said, listen, this has been a wonderful interview, and I hate to soil it. So then she said, well, why would you? And I said, well, there were some photos that leaked today on Perez Hilton. She said, Paris Hilton? And I said, no, Perez Hilton. And Heidi said, oh, it's a gossip site. And Marcia said, I don't want to hear anything more. I told Heidi that if she ever brings these things to my attention, I'll fire her. So she was mortified, and I ended up not putting it in the article. It was a big mistake on my part, but cut to 18 years later, Marcia was the first call that I made for the book, and she responded right away. I shared the chapter with her. And I've been beating myself up over this, as I do other things. People who know me know that I never can get rid of things, never can drop things. So Marcia said, Will, she said, all I focused on was that lovely interview that we had and all the other interviews that you did with me over the years. That was one moment. I let it go, let it go. And she added a little bit more. She said the only person I was mad at was the photographer who snuck into her backyard and took those photos, and she had paid $10,000 to make those photos disappear, and then they reappeared. So I think I was just triggering something in her, like, oh gosh, those photos just won't go away. But again, it's about the power of forgiveness. And Marcia also said that all those squabbles during the Desperate Housewife years, that it was ridiculous. There was a lot of nonsense. They were so lucky, and why did they even argue like that? So, I'm hoping that they'll bury the hatchet.
Well, I
Hatcher.
One last thing, because there is a great takeaway from me learning how to crash a wedding Will Keck style.
Oh yeah.
So the Meredith Baxter, right? I mean, there was one, right?
Yeah.
So maybe share with anybody here crash weddings? Okay, so
Suzanne. Oh my God, Suzanne's was one of my cohorts in crime at the Inquirer. Yeah.
Oh, you have
wow.
I have some questions for you too.
Oh wow. I do have to tell, I'm so glad you're here, Suzanne. I do have to tell one story that's about Suzanne. So Suzanne and I were assigned to crash an event at the Beverly Hilton Hotel. And it was the, Danny Thomas, help me, St. Jude organization. A lovely, it raises money for childhood cancer,
Marla Thomas.
Yes, Marla, Danny's daughter, now runs it. So we walked into the Beverly Hilton, and the first table we saw was the Empty Nest table. Empty Nest, the Golden Girls spinoff, was produced by Tony Thomas, Danny Thomas's son. So there were a couple seats available. Richard Mulligan's chair was available. Richard Mulligan, who, by the way, did molest me, and that's in the book. And also, one other, Kristen Nickel wasn't there. So we took their seats. And so Park Overall, who played Laverne, the secretary or the nurse on there, she said, "Oh, how do y'all involve with St. Jude's?" And I'm like, they helped my grandfather when he was ill. She's like, And so then the presentation comes up, and Marla's saying, St. Jude's has helped children throughout the last 50 years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do I say that my grandfather was very childlike in his final years? So Suzanne and I were there, and you let me answer those questions, Suzanne. You're like, you take this. So yeah, there was just kind of silence, but we had a rubbery chicken there at the Beverly Hilton, and we got out with that. But yeah, it was awful.
But you were in that same predicament. So we're going back. This was if I recall,
Yeah.
Meredith Baxter.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah,
and
yeah.
first of all, you take a date.
Yeah.
You want to.
Yeah.
Like you hijacked a date.
Yeah,
You-
I briefly just say that Stephanie here, one of my closest friends forever, she was my date to Clint Eastwood's wedding. We didn't make it in, but Stephanie did book a hair appointment.
Oh, you were the one who did that. Okay.
Right next to Allison Eastwood, and got some clues about the wedding. We lost the bridesmaids at the very last minute. But yes, so I took a date, a woman that I'd met in, this is how long ago this was, a woman was my date. I'd met her in jury duty, and she was a Christian. And very upstanding woman, and so we're pulling into the Bel Air Hotel, and she's like, "Were we actually invited to this wedding?" I said, "Well, not exactly, but it's going to be fun. Did you watch Family Ties?" "Yes." "Well, it's Meredith Baxter's wedding." Like, oh my gosh. She said, "Well, all right, I'll go ahead with this, but I'm not going to lie." So the key to get into a wedding is to bring a gift. So I stopped and I got a $5 picture frame at Target. And so all the guests were walking into the reception, and so I put down my picture frame, and then we kind of just mingled for a while until there were 2 place cards left that we grabbed, and we sat down in those seats, and we sat next to the minister.
Mhm.
Yes, so there you go,
And-
full circle.
And do you recall what the minister asked you?
Kimberly kind of just chatted about
Okay.
God, I guess,
Yeah,
with
okay.
him, and I took care of the other people.
But-
But yeah, go ahead.
So here's the interesting thing, because you have to write about this wedding that you didn't attend. How do you get information about the wedding service? And you just went to the reception,
yeah,
right?
somebody else covered the wedding. I was covering the
Oh.
reception. I got gold, because there came a moment when it was time for the cake cutting, and all the friends and relatives got up to get a picture of the cake cutting, and I did as well. And that photo appeared in the next week's issue of the National Enquirer. And I'm hoping that she cut that out and put it in her Target frame that I got. That's my hope.
But what do you say to people when they ask you about the service? Like,
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, so one of the guests said, "So what was your favorite part of the wedding?" "The vows." It's a safe bet that there are going to be vows at a wedding, right?
right.
Yeah.
And then you respond with, "and yours," and that's how you get your information?
Yeah, well, again, I was reporting on the reception, so I talked about the roast beef.
Oh, okay.
And the salmon
Okay.
and casserole.
I thought it was
Yeah.
clever, though, because it's a great way to disguise your...
Yeah. I did get some tidbits about.
Okay.
They told me the best part of the wedding was when her sons gave her away. So yeah, I got a few
Okay.
details that got into the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of this led, because eventually she divorced. It was her third wedding, right?
Yes, third wedding to a gentleman, and now she's married to a
and
woman.
now she's
Yeah.
married. But that helped you in a personal way that you reflect on in your book.
Yeah, well, it's one of the arcs in the book is that it was just really so hypocritical that here I was snooping into other people's private lives when I was closeted. So a big arc in the book is how I decided to just kind of come clean. When I came out of the closet, I also decided to just, clean up my life, and I gave notice at the Enquirer. Nobody wanted to hire me. It took a while, but I was able to get back in the game. But the problem was that even though I quit the Enquirer had not yet quit me, as we've discussed. So it took a while, but I think I'm there, and I think I am at a place now when I'm interviewing celebrities that I make them look good. I'm in a happier place, more honest place in my life, and I don't want to cause them misery. And I find I can tell a compelling story without shaming or embarrassing anybody except myself with this book. Yeah.
All right, can we do some Q&A? Is
Yeah.
anybody?
I would love that.
Mark, we first
Yeah.
have a question for you.
No.
We good? No?
Guess we don't have a question.
No, we
Okay,
do.
go ahead. Okay.
Mark, first before we open up to questions, you had the advanced copy of this book.
Yeah.
Who did you cringe when you read the story? Because you knew and know a lot of these celebrities, whether it be from Entertainment Tonight, you've interviewed them, or Home and Family.
Yeah, probably because we experienced together. I mean, there's so many, I can't pick one. But what comes to mind,
Yeah.
and I mentioned this earlier, we didn't get to it, is the Adam West. But how cleverly he played you. You were doing a jailhouse interview with his daughter.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And which is a whole separate thing, but listening to that and then having him confront you and call you and then fall into his manipulation.
He was a genius. That's the way you deal with the Inquirer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just very briefly, then I do want to open up to you guys. I was, again, a superhero fan. Adam West's assignment, great. I get to go to Hawaii to interview Adam West's daughter, who's in prison for trying to murder her in-laws. So I got a prison interview. I left my card on some of Adam West's relatives' front doors, and so I'm back in my hotel room, and the phone rings. Yes, William Keck, please. And I said, yes. Yeah, this is Bill Anderson. Bill Anderson was Adam West's real name. I knew that from the court papers that I had pulled. And he says, William, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for doing your diligence and flying all the way out there to interview my daughter and get the true story. And by the end of this, by the time Adam West finished working me, the story in the Inquirer was Grandpa Batman to the rescue, raising kids while mom does time. And he provided photos. So nobody wanted to talk to the Inquirer. So when a celebrity said, you know what, I'll do business with you, we just bowed down to them. And obviously there was no requirement because a lot of these celebrities have been burned time and time again. But there were ways to avoid scandals. We could make arrangements. We'll cover this if you do this. And I think that's done
And
a lot.
And a note on his daughter, how she's today.
Oh, she's great. Yeah, she's terrific. I asked Adam. Jonelle is out of prison. She's clean and sober and doing very well. So happy footnote for Jonelle.
Well, congratulations on a great book. Just got to ask you,
Yeah.
out of all the stories, who do you have the most redemption from writing this book at this point?
Wow. Oh my gosh. It sounds cheesy, but myself. Yeah, like I said, I was beating myself up over a lot of these things, and I did see, you know what, that's who I was, but it's not who I am now. And yeah, the little boost that I got from some of these people, Victoria Principal, I hadn't spoken with in 10 years. She called me up. We had a lovely, off the record, not in the book, hour conversation, but we wished each other well. So yeah, this really ended up healing a lot of wounds that I'd caused over the years.
Okay, let's open it up to the audience and see if anyone has a cringe-worthy question for you.
Please.
It's not cringeworthy, I don't need that. It's not cringeworthy, it's just that you talk about this before and after, and I'm wondering if there's an epiphany in the middle that got you there.
Yeah, well, there is. What ultimately caused me to quit the Inquirer, Suzanne, actually, again, Suzanne and I took, Suzanne. So I was closeted. I was invited to my college roommate's wedding, and so I invited Suzanne. Suzanne, would you mind standing up so people can see how gorgeous and wonderful and beautiful you are? So Suzanne was my beard to my college roommate's wedding, and so right before we flew out to New York, G.I. Jane was coming out, and there was the photo of Demi Moore with her head shaved, and Suzanne shaved her head. So my beard that I was taking, my gorgeous blonde hair, I mean, still gorgeous, was she had shaved her head. So I told everybody at the wedding that Suzanne had cancer and was so everybody came up to Suzanne. Oh, I think you look so beautiful, and our thoughts are with you. So Suzanne and I took the Staten Island ferry back to the city after the wedding, and we were kind of curious what the new cover of the Inquirer was going to be. This is before there was the internet. So we had both worked on stories that week, and we saw the cover. None of our stories were on there. It was three kind of just horrible stories. One was about Rosie O'Donnell, like trying to out her again. There was a really horrible Joan London story about a friend who had died in a plane crash. But the one that really got to me was an image of Raquel Welch. And it was just a paparazzi photo of her just looking despondent. And I do write in my book about, like a lot of us, my battle with, depression here and there. And I'm like, that could be me. The whole story, there's no story here. The story is that they got a photo of Raquel on a really, really bad day. And to make it worse, they put a photo of her in her glam heyday. And it was talking about the sad, lonely days of Raquel Welch. And I'm like, no, I can't do this anymore. This is not me. So that was my journey out. Yeah. And Raquel Welch then came on to Home and Family.
Yeah.
Were you yeah.
I was there, yeah.
Do you remember
Oh,
what was
yeah.
special about that?
I remember her lighting grid was special.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Right.
she needed an
Right.
extra 40 minutes, I think.
Tracy, right?
Yes. check the camera angles, and then she wanted to change the artwork behind the couch.
Yes.
Yeah, but so that also affected me. Here's somebody who's so concerned about her appearance. She must have been so crushed and horrified by that photo. So it was a reminder that, thank goodness I got out when I did. So, long answer to that question. I'll make the other one shorter if there are other ones. Yes?
I assume your boss was David Pecker.
Oh.
And I would be interested to hear something about him and his very good buddy, Donald Trump.
Yes. Well, I was actually gone before David came in. But I have been asked in interviews about this catch and kill thing that was a big part of the Trump trial. And I didn't have any experience with catch and kill, but our version at the time of that was exchanges. So we all know about Bill Cosby now. The Inquirer knew about that forever. And they kept it quiet. They had a dossier on him in their safe down in Montana, Florida. And so Bill knew that anytime the Inquirer called for a Happy Father's Day story, he better come on the phone and do one of those interviews, or else. I received photos of Don Johnson naked, reading USA Today in a hotel room. And we didn't do a story on that, but they wanted those photos. They wanted to hold those just in case they needed Don Johnson for something. So that's the way things worked back then. But no, I didn't meet David Pecker. Suzanne, did you meet David Pecker? Any one word to describe him? Anything at all?
I mean this in the best way and in the worst way possible, but he and Trump really are, they're very simpatico. They're similar mindset about business and how to do things.
Yeah. You know, Suzanne and I were there during the 90s, during the OJ trial, when the Inquirer all of a sudden got all this street cred, and everyone, LA Times came and do a story on us, New York Times lauded us for breaking news. But you compare that to 2024, and when the Trump trial was going on, I went on to nationalenquirer.com to see how it was doing. They had not posted a new story in 2 years. And one of the lead stories was, why can't James Caan find the right woman? Because he's been dead for a couple of years. It's hard to find the Inquirer out there, so I think that David Pecker destroyed that paper with his agenda.
Why do you think that type of tabloid journalism has been?
Well, I think a great deal of it is that celebrities are breaking their own news. They're taking control of the narrative through their social media sites. I mean, I think if something does happen with Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, it'll come from them. It may be with the help of a publicist, but they'll announce, instead of having to call USA Today to make the announcement, they'll say, we have decided to amicably depart and we ask for your privacy. So that's a big part of it. But I think also that they don't have strong, scary people running the paper anymore. I wouldn't have done these things if I didn't have bosses who were making me go out there and encouraging me and saying, you can do this, Kecky, we believe in you, you can get in that hospital room, here's more money, here's a bonus for getting the scandal story. I think that it's all become way more lax, and they're lazy, and that ended up killing the National Enquirer. Boo-hoo, poor National Enquirer, right? We felt terrible for National Enquirer, but a big win for TMZ though.
Yeah,
they're the new
Yeah.
game in town.
Yeah. Anybody else?
David.
How much of this did you share with your mom? I know you're very
No.
close with her. Did you really get into the dirty stuff with her that you did?
So when Kelsey wrote in his book, Kelsey described me, he said, William Keck, a despicable piece of flesh for the National Enquirer. I invite you to burn in hell. It's available on audio tape if you want to hear Fraser read that. So he said, your mother must be very, very proud of you. That was my outgoing answer machine message for a little while. But my mom was thrilled. I was in Kelsey Grammer's book. She was amazed. Yeah, so I did tell my mom to skip a couple parts, maybe Vegas stories she shouldn't read. But I gave her a heads up. She has a great sense of humor, so she hasn't received the book yet. A few pages might be missing. Please, couple more. Anybody have a question? Oh, hey! Hi, Tony.
Hi, can you tell us the Adam West, Frank Gorshin orgy story?
Julie Newmar and Vincent Price and Eartha Kitt, the whole cast. Alfred the butler was there. Incredible. Mark.
Was there anybody that you were seeking redemption from but didn't get? Somebody who would return the phone calls for the book?
Yes. I mean, of course. I was hoping Drew Barrymore, I mean, the higher celebrity, the less likely you're going to hear from them. What I found is when I had their personal info from my years working for Home and Family and for all these USA Today, I kept every phone number. They said yes for the most part. If I had an experience with them on Home and Family, I had to clean up a lot of things with Home and Family. If I had to go through the publicist, it wasn't going to happen. They just weren't going to bother them. In a few cases, they did. Harlan, yes, my amazing publicist, who represents so many of my heroes. He helped get a lot of the quotes that are in the front of the book. So Harlan, you were a huge help with this. I can't thank you enough. Thank you for that. Lindsay being one of them. So, yeah.
Were you ever dropped from, and I'm trying to think from Home and Family, did we have a guest on you were assigned to?
Once, and as a Desperate Housewives guest. Yeah. Yeah, it was Nicolette. Yeah, Nicolette came on to promote. Tracy, probably my boss, probably knows several celebrities that I wasn't allowed to interview, but the only one I'm aware of was Nicolette, and she said, "Oh, William Keck. Oh no, I won't come on the show unless somebody else produces that segment." So we reassigned it in that case.
Why?
I had her. I did her exit interview from Desperate Housewives. I had the exclusive on that. And the interview that I chose to do was her death scene. I went to set when she was dying. She was under a car, and it was fake raining on Wisteria Lane, and she was just miserable and wet, and I had my tape recorder in her face at that time. You could blame the publicist, I guess, for setting that up, even agreeing to that.
Read the room, Will, read the room.
What I loved about that is that every time they yelled cut during her death scene, they didn't say Edie is dying. They said Nicolette is dying, Nicolette is dead. So she had a few reasons. And also, Mark Cherry was giving me his side of the story about her dismissal, that he wanted to show the other women a lesson for asking for too much money, and she was causing problems. And then he gave me a quote about Nicolette. He said, "Nobody played the aging tramp better than Nicolette Sheridan." So I told Nicolette this quote, and she said, "Oh, what a bitch." So this story all appeared in TV Guide. Thank you to my editor for allowing that story to run. I appreciate that, Deborah. But yeah, no, she recognized my name, and she's like, no, I'm done with that. I don't need that. Yeah, please, Brad.
You've got one interview left, Will. Who are you interviewing? Who's the one person that you kind of missed that you would like either A, a do-over, or B, someone that you never got to?
Wow. Gosh,
that's a good question.
My mind's racing to a few people. There's one chapter in the book where I talk about, I had a stalker once. I had a stalker. Tim didn't believe me. My best friend Tim. My best friends are all right here. But Tim was, just didn't believe me. But yes, he experienced. We were in a hall one time, and this guy just kind of appeared, and we were just terrified by this guy. So I write about that in a chapter about my obsession, my stalker tendencies toward Victoria Principal. When I first came out to LA, I really just wanted to meet her, and one of the ways I got to meet her was by going to her plastic surgeon husband and getting a nose job, Dr. Harry Glassman, and I did get to meet her through that. And we ended up having a really good relationship, and when she adamantly refused to return to Dallas, the new TNT Dallas, I flipped out. I went crazy. She was gonna give me an exclusive statement about her decision. She ended up giving that to Nellie, who gets all the stories in this town. So I went a little nuts on social media. I say I went effing nuts. So even though we talked for an hour, I feel like there's still something unresolved there. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about Victoria Principal. I can't let it go. I don't know. Is she here? Victoria, are you here?
What happens when this book tour ends? And everything goes silent? Because you've had a chance to talk it all out.
Good question.
Yeah. And you become still with it again. Is it going to be gone? Or is it still just embedded? Is it more therapy, Will?
Yeah, oh my gosh, this was therapy. But no, I'm good with this. There was a time again when I was so secret about everything, and now it's all out there, and it is really liberating. The truth does set you free.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Heidi.
Was there
Heidi.
ever a time where you were on assignment or something and you, like you got scared? You know, you just found yourself in a situation where you're like, oh my God, I'm scared. How do I get out of here?
Oh my God.
What am I doing?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, all the time. And it's the first story I tell in the book, and it was days after Nicole Brown Simpson had been laid to rest, 3 days. And my editor, Brian Williams, not the NBC Brian Williams, he said, you've got to get into the Brown family's gated complex and get the first interview. I'm like, well, it's not going to happen. They're on guard. I tried flower delivery. I tried grocery delivery. It was turned away. Well, this gated community was right next to the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Niguel. So I valeted my car. I had a suit on. I hopped a fence. I ran down the beach. I jumped another wall. I was in the gated community. I worked my way up to the Brown family's house. I'd been given the address by the editor. I called my editor. I said, well, I'm in. What do I do? He said, well, go knock on the door. I get the interview. So I just didn't think this was going to ever happen. I got to the door. I rang the doorbell. The housekeeper answered. And I said, I'm here to see Mrs. Brown. And so the housekeeper led me into the house, and it was like something out of a movie. It looked staged almost, but it happened. Nicole's mother, Juditha, and her 3 sisters were sitting in a study around a photo of Nicole, crying, and lovely, lovely Mrs. Brown took my hand and said, thank you so much for coming. How did you know my Nicole? And I told the truth. I told the truth. And they all I said, I'm so sorry for this horrible invasion. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm with the Inquirer. And they all stood up and started to walk me toward the door. And she said, well, what do you want? You made all this effort. And I said, well, I guess I'd like to know how you told the children that their mother was gone. It turned out to be the right question. She told me a really emotional story about how she sat the kids down and said, you're gonna be okay. Your mommy's gonna be an angel looking after you for the rest of your life. And now you have 4 mommies that are gonna be looking out for you for the rest of your life down here on Earth. The story ran exactly as she told me. I'm sure they didn't appreciate the invasion of privacy, but they appreciated that Nicole's story was being told instead of all the emphasis on OJ, OJ, OJ. So that ended up establishing a relationship between the Browns and the Inquirer that lasted for several years. They became the mouthpiece for Nicole from beyond the grave. And when it was time to get a first look at those photos that Nicole had taken of herself all battered, I took an artist rendering. They were in the possession of the authorities. I took an artist rendering down to the Brown family for them to approve it before it got on the cover of the Inquirer. So a horrible situation I was terrified to do ended up having some redeeming qualities of benefit to them.
Did you have to jump back over the fence then? Sorry. I just had to go up on that. That was a really heavy
I
one.
said, can I have a ride, actually? Is it back to Laguna Niguel?
I'm just trying to figure out how you exit that.
Yeah,
Okay,
lock that part out, but yeah. Found my shoes on the beach and walked back. Anybody else?
Right.
Yeah.
Were there any stories you worked long and hard on, and then they killed it? They spiked it, and you never got a chance to see them through?
Oh, yeah, great, very good question. An example of this was, do you remember Dinah Shore? Dinah Shore, she was a singer, but also a... What's that?
I said, us dinosaurs here.
Yeah.
Well, I talk about that I babysat for a kid, Joshua, and I was telling him about Dinah Shore and her talk show, and he started laughing, and I said, why are you laughing? He said, a dinosaur hosted a talk show? So dinosaur, yes, good reference. I was covering her funeral. I brought my family, they were in town, so I decided to bring them. They were a great cover. My grandmother chose to sit in the car. She thought that was reprehensible, my mom and Jim. So behind us is Bob Hope. Next to my stepfather is Gerald and Betty Ford. It was just trippy, it was incredible. So I got all this amazing detail, and in the end, they ran none of that, and instead they just ran how she never gave up on Burt Reynolds. She died loving Burt. They'd already written what the story was going to be. I don't know why they even sent me there. It was great color I got. one of the things my mom and I still talk about is that when it came time to bring Dinah out, Dinah had been cremated. The woman who brought her out had her urn on a tray right next to the coffee maker and the creamer and the sugar.
Oh, no.
We just start dying, and we're like, I hope nobody mixes up an instant Dinah Shore at the end of the service.
Were you the neighborhood kid that always ran around and said, "Guess what happened?" You know?
Oh my gosh,
Were you
I
that-
was such a weird kid. I would go to the bus stop and I would say, hey, you remember that neighbor lady on Bewitched? She just died of cancer at age 67. okay, you know, weird. So when I saw that Vivian Vance was dying on the cover of the Inquirer, it was traumatizing. Oh my God, Ethel Mertz is dying? So yeah, no,
You were that
absolutely.
kid.
I was totally. I
Makes sense.
This didn't make it in the book, I don't think, but I collected celebrity obituaries. I was like a total Wednesday Addams. And then I would go to the library and I would cut out the obituaries that I missed.
When you were doing these stories where you had to really do a brave,
Yeah.
perhaps foolhardy thing to get the story, did you have your tape recorder with you? Did you have a reporter's notebook? Did you remember it? What did you do as a journalist to make sure you could get the quote?
You remembered, you ran into a closet and wrote things down on a notebook. I couldn't whip out my tape recorder at that time. It was like going into the Vanity Fair party. If you're allowed 15 minutes into the Vanity Fair party, you can't bring a recorder in. So you see something, you hear something, you run into the bathroom and jot it down, and then go back and just kind of mingle with your champagne. So yeah, I had to memorize these things, but I did write down every license plate. I kept every hospital room number that I crashed. So all those details. I have Andy Griffith's home number in the book. I'm like, okay, I think it's okay to publish Andy Griffith's home number probably at this point. So yeah, I just kept meticulous notes, and I kept everything, knowing I would someday write this.
Oh, you mentioned all the people who gave you quotes. I have to tell you, when Donna, Joan, Lindsay, Dee,
Donna Mills, Joan Van Ark, Lindsay Wagner,
we all went over when she and I, when they all went over the quotes with me, there were so many revisions.
Oh my gosh.
Before the final, Lindsay alone, how many times did
Oh my,
over
yeah.
and over and over to make sure it sounded just right, couldn't be read wrong or misleading.
That's
And you know I'm going to call Julie Newmar right after I leave here and ask about that orgy.
Harlan, those are all his clients. I mean, Harlan, works with all those lovely ladies. Yeah, I mean, one of my favorites, Joan Van Ark from Knots Landing, just a heart of gold. But yeah, I mean, I think she's still calling, wanting to change her quote to amend it. It's too late, Joan, it's in there. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate all of them. But yeah, I mean, they like it a certain way, these ladies.
Okay, everyone. Will Keck, you got his book right here. Mark Steines.